Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on today's Industry Insights. Hopefully you guys got a great sneak peek of what we have to come in just a couple of weeks with Veeam On. Veeam On will be available virtually, but we hope you join us in person in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where it will be much warmer than it is for me and my co-host today. I am your host, Leah Troscianecki, Principal Product Marketing Manager at Veeam, and one of your regular hosts for Industry Insights. I'm joined today by a special guest, a longtime friend of mine, Tim Hudson. He is joining me from Ohio as well. We're just about an hour away from each other in a much less tropical, much less exciting environment, but we do love our Ohio State Buckeyes. Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Leah, for having me.
Absolutely. And Tim and I have known each other for a very long time because him and I have actually been longtime members of the service provider team here at Veeam. I joined Veeam in 2014 as one of the founding members of the service provider team. I helped launch our very first service provider product, Veeam Cloud Connect. I was the person on the back end doing a lot of the coding and getting ready for our very first service provider directory at Veeam. And Tim was one of our very first solution architects on the service provider team. He has worked hand in hand with some of our top partners, including 1111 Systems, formerly iLand. I almost said iLand in my head and had to pivot on that one very fast. Tim, thank you so much for joining us today and bringing your expertise to this topic, because we are going to be extending our series all about the Cloud Protection Trends Report for 2024, specifically talking about how you can choose a service provider to partner with. Last week, you saw myself and Jason Buffington discuss some of the current trends around backup as a service, disaster recovery as a service, cloud-powered data protection. There's so many declensions and categorizations you can make about this topic. But one of the big things we talked about is why Veeam decided to start adding one of our own offerings into the equation, but we are still very excited to partner with this vast ecosystem of service provider partners and ultimately providing the power of choice to customers all around the world, because frankly, we know that Veeam will never be able to scale enough to provide exactly what every customer needs for every part of the equation of their data protection strategy. So Tim and I today are going to offer some insights from Cloud Protection Trends Report, as well as a lot of our own personal experience. I have worked with service providers from around the globe. Tim has a lot of that boots on the ground field experience. So between the two of us, hopefully we can help anyone who is listening today or watching us on a recording kind of learn a little more about why you might want to look at partnering with a service provider and some of the considerations for what you should be looking for, because we know there is a very real tyranny of choice. There are tens of thousands of service providers out there that you can partner with that offer a wide variety of services. They're combining different services together. So it might be kind of confusing to figure out what's going to be the best fit for your organization. What are some of those use cases? So today, Tim and I are going to talk through a little bit about that. But first, we want to go ahead and invite you guys to join us in the chat if you're joining us live today, and tell us where you're calling in from. As I said, we are joining you from Ohio, as well as our video team. So we have a very Ohio crew today. We also have Felicia on socials joining us from Texas, although she let us know today that her father is the Ohio State University graduate. So once again, go Buckeyes. But we want to hear from all of you guys. I actually, just a couple of weeks ago, was all the way out in Vietnam. So I'm hoping to see some Asia representation, even though it is quite late there. I was an 11-hour time difference just a few weeks ago. So apologies if I trip over my words, because I am still jet lagged from some of those travels. So with that, keep joining us in that chat. We'll check back on that map in a little bit here. And we're hoping to see some of those other continents light up. I know I always get excited when we hear anyone from Africa, from Latin America. We always have a strong contingent from Europe. So let us know where you are joining us from. It'll be a great show to join together. Especially because, Tim, I think one of the things we'll end up talking about is data sovereignty. So I'm sure that there are some folks out there who have some unique data sovereignty needs. Let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. But with that, I think Tim and I will go ahead and light up our very first graphic. As you all know, if you've tuned into us before on the Veeam team, you know that we are very committed to data. We want to make sure that we are making data-driven decisions as we continue to innovate as a company. So we partner with third-party research firms to really understand more about what organizations are facing today. And this data comes from not just current Veeam customers. We interview customers from all over the world who use Veeam, use other backup products. And specifically in the Cloud Protection Trends Report, we asked several questions about cloud-based backup services. In particular, this is a question asking, what were the top factors on how your organization chose its current cloud backup service provider? So again, this is coming from current customers of service providers and asking them what made them make that decision. And so, Tim, I know one of the first things that we talked about as we were looking at this data was that very top graphic obviously has a pretty big delta between the next consideration, which is solutions that are in their portfolio, i.e., do they also offer disaster recovery, cybersecurity services, et cetera. And I know, Tim, for you and I, as we were talking about this, that was not a surprise to see, because I think more and more organizations are looking for kind of end-to-end services. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing in the field around service combinations and kind of what's really getting customers excited these days?
Yeah, Leah, absolutely. So I'll start with my perspective from working with service providers directly. When folks are choosing about what services to offer, what services to specialize in, I like to ask my partner group, who are they? Who do they want to be? It's a little bit of a philosophical question, and I'm not trying to make anyone think like they're children or anything. And who are you when you want to be, when you want to grow up? But it is important that businesses answer that question for themselves, and our Veeam cloud and service providers must do that to be able to really deliver excellent services. That most partners like to specialize in one or more categories, like disaster recovery, for example. And then subsequently, when we work with end users and customers, we're also asking them, who are you? And what do you do? And what do you maybe not want to do? Because if we combine the answers to these two questions, we'll come up with solutions of which type of partners make sense to leverage, to implement the services that are required. So, for example, if I'm a small business, maybe I'm a law firm, IT is incredibly important, but it might not be all of my business. I might want to have my hands in certain things and want my hands out of certain things. And so I need to know what those are specifically. Like, it's very important to recognize these are my needs. And then working with something like the partner directory that you created so long ago, find these partners that provide these specialties for those needs. This is the combination where we see success, recognizing, hey, it's a disaster recovery need that I have. I don't have a second data center. Go and work with a partner who specializes in disaster recovery. Not only will they have this second or multiple data centers to be able to replicate your data to and be able to power on these workloads in the event of a test or disaster, but they might also offer the next combination that you need. You might have a managed service need that combines with a disaster recovery need. And it's these types of recognition, Leah, where we see success. Are you honest with who you are? Are you honest about what those needs are? and we'll find that partner who can honestly give you this top tier service that you need.
Definitely. And I think that differentiation continues to be kind of a calling card of why we're so excited to partner with service providers from around the world, because we ultimately know that backup may be something that organizations think is an easy button checkbox. We, of course, think that it's not that way and that there's lots of things that you could be doing to improve your backup strategy. But there's a lot of things that backup fits into, a disaster recovery strategy being one of them. We partner with some pretty impressive disaster recovery as a service who will really think end to end what disaster recovery management looks like, right? You might want to find a service provider who is a different country away, or in the United States, a different FEMA zone away. They may offer co-location services so that if you want to fly someone out there during a disaster, they can actually physically be there. There will probably be food on site, showers on site, somewhere you can sit down and relax. They will also often think end to end. How does an organization contend with a disaster? Does there need to be a disaster recovery plan in place? Do we need to have automatic failovers because people are worried about their families in the event of some kinds of disasters, right? So there's so much that a service provider can offer, and Veeam ends up just being a very tiny part of that overall equation. And so it just really kind of rounds out all of the expertise and specialization. Same thing goes for cybersecurity. And obviously, if you have tuned into a single thing that Veeam has done in the last 2 years, you have heard us talk about cybersecurity. So for folks playing bingo at home, cyber, resilience, I'll just keep saying the buzzwords so that you get those in there. But ultimately, I think this is another place that service providers are differentiating, because we've seen a lot of service providers start to offer managed security services, MSSP. And I actually, a long time ago, did a session about that at Veeam. I think it was in 2020 with myself, Anthony Spiteri, and Danny Allen, actually, our former CTO, who has a very long history in cyber and actually just went to a cyber company as well. So we continue to see this combination of services as a way to not only differentiate service providers between each other, but to contextualize backup into bigger business situations. So that is super exciting. Tim, anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, I think the cybersecurity positioning here is very interesting. As you mentioned, we've introduced technology features into the product in the last couple of versions to support our continuing innovation in this space. And again, when I'm working with service providers today, I'm asking them, are you leveraging these features? I'm asking them, when you deliver remote managed services for backup and replication, are you implementing these new features? And not everyone is. So again, when I'm answering your question of why do end users choose a particular partner or not, it sometimes plays into this. What's been newly introduced? How have folks started to use these features, hopefully to the fullest of their ability? And this is something I like to see our end customers kind of lean on or stress to their service providers. Hey, this new malware scanning feature came out. Have we introduced it in our platform that you manage for us? If the answer is a resounding yes, this is a good feeling. It's a feeling of joint effort and joint protection together, working together as two organizations trying to deliver great services, and in the end, great protection for their data.
Definitely. And I think one of those calling cards of cyber resilience being part of a backup service offering tends to be the expertise that is being offered. So you'll notice in some of this other selection criteria, you'll see elements like certifications or security accreditations, right? Especially for any organizations who are tuning in today, you might be contending with specific regulatory compliance requirements, and you may not necessarily want to make that your day job to be keeping up to date on all of the latest requirements. So a lot of these service provider partners can really kind of come in and offer that. We see that with partnerships like Kyndryl and IBM, for example. Those are two very strong partners of ours, and in fact, we're going to be joined next week by Kyndryl to talk a bit about DORA regulations out of Europe. But bringing it back to this topic specifically, I think that's a big reason why a lot of organizations will choose to partner with some of these providers, is looking at, what specific expertise do you have on staff that can help me really up the game ultimately. You'll see some of the kind of table stakes requirements as well, like certain kind of pricing requirements, or again, data sovereignty requirements. We have a very healthy service provider community out of Asia and Europe specifically for that reason. But I think one of the ones, coming back to something that you said, Tim, is that second criteria that came up the most, the backup technology or vendors that they offered. Ultimately, Veeam is in the game of resiliency, and we believe that we have a unique offering here. But what's kind of nice about going with a third party is that ultimately they can offer a wide variety of solutions so that every single workload, every single requirement gets met. And I think, Tim, you certainly see that in the field as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of my partners do work with a competing data protection vendor. And, philosophically inside, much love to all of our competition out there. I think we're doing great things in the space for our end users. And yes, I want to say there's a particular value add for working with a service provider who might be able to leverage multiple technologies, because in the end, it's about satisfying an end customer's requirements. And if there is something that we can't satisfy or don't want it, or maybe a partner doesn't want to satisfy, or a customer doesn't want to leverage Veeam for, we've got to be able to, as a partner, deliver comprehensive services. So if they have to work with multiple vendors, maybe multiple data protection products, we want to see the customer being protected. We want to see them able to meet their disaster recovery goals. And it's good that a partner could look at two competitors in the market, use them appropriately, and then be successful with an end customer. If that's what it's all about, which I think it is, it's great to see that we have partners that can kind of intelligently put two competing pieces of software maybe together to deliver something great. That is a success story in my mind, and I'm glad that we can work together in the end to meet a customer's requirements. I think that's incredibly important.
Absolutely. And ultimately, I think that's why we're so excited to partner with so many of these service providers. We want to do the right thing for the customer. And part of that is staying agile to changing needs from different kinds of organizations that we work with. And more, we're seeing backup not necessarily being a commodity, a white label. Instead, we're seeing a lot of organizations want to be much more hands-on in the last few years with their backup policies. I'm going to put a pin on that. We're going to talk about that a little more with our next data set. But before I do that, I want to go back to the map, because as I understand it, we've got some very cool map entries. I mentioned that I wanted to see some LATAM representation. Thank you so much for the folks joining us from Brazil today. That's super exciting. And again, keep coming into that comments. We want to know where you're calling in from. We also have someone joining us from Kenya in Africa. So I got another part of the map lit up. I'm super excited. So keep letting us know where you're calling in from. We're super excited to have you all joining us today from whatever platform you choose. We had a fun little chat before we started the show today about, what do we call it now? Is it X? I don't want to say X, it's Twitter maybe. So wherever you're calling in from, your platform of choice, thank you so much for joining us. Let us know in the chat. We will probably check in again on that map in just a little bit. But for now, let's go ahead and dive into our next data set, which is really looking at the wide variety of service definitions or level of hands-on that the customer may want to have versus the cloud provider. Now, when you look at cloud services, there is always a concept called the shared responsibility model. Your data, your responsibility. Cloud providers ultimately provide that underlying infrastructure management. What's nice about our service provider partners, though, is they will often go a step further from some of the classic shared responsibility models, and they will provide higher touch offerings for backup policy settings, disaster recovery management, etc. But in the last few years, we have noticed that more and more customers want to be more hands-on with the management of their backup policies. And you can see here the comparison between 2021 and 2024, huge jump in the number of customers that wanted their IT teams to be managing the entirety of the backup process, and instead are looking to a service provider to just manage that underlying infrastructure. And Tim and I have a lot of ideas and things we've heard from customers about why that might be the case, and ultimately how the kind of makeup of organizations who choose to use backup as a service is likely changing. I think when Tim and I first kind of got into the industry, we had a big assumption that backup as a service was mostly for small business, maybe 500 employees and a little bit higher than that. But then anyone above that would want to completely manage their backups end to end. And I think that we busted that assumption pretty early on, but it's growing even stronger because we're seeing really big trends in the industry around what some of the pundits are calling industry clouds. You'll hear this from a lot of the big cloud providers and a lot of the analysts as well. This idea that you want to kind of customize a set of solutions for specific vertical needs. A lot of that is coming from, again, regulatory compliance requirements, data retention requirements, data sovereignty, P2 management. There's a wide variety of these things happening. But I think we're seeing that more and more organizations are looking to cloud providers to manage that part of the equation of how is the data actually being stored and the availability being maintained, but that they want to be managing the actual backup policy setting, the actual restore process. They want to have more of a hands-on experience. And again, Tim, I think that's a lot of why we're seeing so many larger companies, upper commercial, enterprise, heavily regulated industries like healthcare and financial services using cloud providers more and more.
Yeah, Leah, this goes back to my comment earlier about knowing who you are and who it is you want to work with. I agree. In the field, I see this data played out. And how do I know that? Because I'm working with partners who are asking me, how do I deliver self-service for this remote managed scenario? How can I provide self-service to my customer, but prevent them from making these types of changes? These questions come up a lot more often in the last year or two than previous to that. I'm being asked more by my partner groups, how can I use Veeam tools to provide this self-service capability that's being asked for? My typical answer is through the Veeam Service Provider Console directly, right? As a one-stop shop for all services that a given provider could deliver. This product enables the self-service interaction for customers, and it's typically what we see these customers referred to so that they can do what they need and not do the things they shouldn't do. To follow on with your comment about some larger companies being interested in this kind of fully managed backup as a service, I'll use an example I'm very familiar with. I've done a lot of design and implementation work for a solution sold and delivered by our partner, Kyndryl. They work with a large multinational publicly traded company with users all over the globe and sites all over the globe. Post-COVID, they have remote users that never came back to the office. They're still at home. They're using their company laptops. So how are they keeping their data backed up? Well, of course, they have some stuff in O365, but they're also using Veeam agents on these laptops and workstations to back up to, in this case, IBM Object Storage. So from the customer's home, from an end user's home, they can back up their workstations to a secure bucket and get their data back if they need. They can always rely on things like some of the O365 data, but they have individual machine-specific data saved. When they have sites in the same solution, when they have sites that are offline, dark, they use the same Veeam toolset to back up their servers and workstations in these sites, and they're storing them locally. As a large multinational being managed by a partner, I was impressed to see that not only is this service being delivered well through Veeam, this is a win from a competing product that was implemented years ago that didn't really quite cut it. So when the organizations together decided they wanted to modernize, they chose Veeam, they tested, they implemented, and we've seen a really successful solution get deployed. And I'm just so impressed that this has scaled to the level that's being asked, and very happy to see that the same type of solution we've implemented for small and medium businesses gets implemented for a multinational enterprise with thousands of users. And it's just really, it's kind of like, it's almost humbling in a way to see, Leah, that these solutions work across the board in terms of a fully managed solution, but also as customers drive to a more joint managed solution, they can still get the same great services using the same tool set. And again, I'm just impressed that we've delivered the product set so that regardless of whether this is you fully delivered or jointly managed, get the same great result.
And I think a lot of that is because so many of the business situations and demands that small businesses are facing or multinational large scale organizations are facing are oftentimes the same. I think that there's a very high propensity on both ends of the scale for a cybersecurity attack, that there is still a wide variety of companies that are contending with work from home, hybrid work. And we're also seeing cloud adoption continue to go less and less as an enterprise only play and more into the small business space. And as your data grows and moves different locations, controlling the backup and resiliency of those workloads gets harder and harder. So the fact that Veeam has been able to meet the needs of both ends and our service provider community has also risen to the challenge, I think is a testament to the fact that so many of these organizations face the same kinds of issues. And it's just all about mixing and matching the things that make the most sense for each organization to get the job done, which is super exciting. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and switch gears a little bit. Tim, thank you so much for joining me today on this talk track. I think we've had some really great data and some things that we've talked about for any organizations that might be thinking about searching for a service provider. Something else you might be thinking about is cybersecurity, as we have said 17 times on this live stream. So I want to go ahead and tease our Thursday Tech Bites, which is all about this new Splunk app from Veeam. So if your organization wants to better integrate backup and cybersecurity, that is definitely something we've heard loud and clear in all of our research. This will be a really great show. It's actually going to be an interactive demo. So while this was a really great kind of macro level trends chat, you will get on the nitty gritty of the actual tech on Thursday's live stream. And then next week, my colleague Jeff Reichart will be joining you guys for our next Industry Insights, joined by two very special guests. We have a special guest from Kyndryl, who we've mentioned a couple of times. They are a great service provider and systems integration partner of ours, as well as one of our brand new field CISOs who has joined on a couple of the live streams, and you'll continue to see him more and more in the months ahead as we continue to bring that field expertise to these live streams. So be sure to join us next Tuesday, May 28th, for our Industry Insights, all about DORA regulations. And the final thing that I will go ahead and tease is all about Veeam, because as I said at the top of this live stream, we are so excited to join you all from wherever you're able to join us, whether it's joining us live or joining us in person. If you do want to join us in person, if you want to go ahead and book your flights to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, we actually have a promo code going right now, Final Call 300, that will get you $300 off your in-person registration. We will be jam-packed with lots of really exciting sessions. I have two myself, all about Veeam Data Cloud. We will also be live streaming from the show floor with Industry Insights. In addition to that, though, we've got lots of really great competitions and hands-on experiences. So whether you are looking to get certified as a Veeam engineer, so VMCE, whether you want to compete in our Lab Wars, we've got some great prizes for Lab Wars, and we will have a legendary celebration at the Diplomat Hotel in Fort Lauderdale. There is plenty of reasons to join us in person, especially if you want to escape some not as nice weather like us here in Ohio. So with that, thank you so much for joining us on today's live stream. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.